youngsters, I do still always have teaching projects on the go. I'm always after high challenge and low threat. And we want that for our colleagues as well. You don't get the best out of people if you diminish them. Right? And I can tell you, no one's perfect. And the person who's giving that feedback isn't perfect. I'm not perfect. And by the way, I get inspected too. Yeah, I get quality assured too. And I get 10 minutes notice. The school gets a call. I'm already in there. And I get a call. And someone's arriving. Senior person's arriving. Checking me there into the minutes. All bloody marvellous. And I've written about it. I've blogged about it actually. And I can tell you, not every aspect of my work is outstanding. And I'm quite okay with that. I'll be outstanding when I do the last nail goes in the coffin. I am okay with that. Right? But I'm always looking to improve. I'm obviously good enough. I'm always working good enough. But there are aspects of my work where I say actually, you do let the school. Okay. Oh yes, so what training of inspectors had on interpreting data and are the limitations of the data schools collect? Understood. Okay. We do have a lot of training on the data. It's the data that we have is it's threefold really. It's the Raise Online, which we only have access to your Raise Online when we have been told we're inspecting you. We have it about two and a half weeks in advance. We can't just look at any school's Raise. Okay. We have the data dashboard, which is a bit crude, frankly. It gives you some headlines, but I never run too far with the data dashboard because there have been some mistakes on those. But anyway, it is a bit crude. We have the school zone data and what's going on the website. Okay. Now, the point about Raise is setting out the context for your schools. It's telling you it's telling us the attainment, the headline attainment. It's saying whether it's met, the government's department's thresholds or not. The really critical bit that we have to get our heads around are the progress measures. Okay, so we have a lot of training and discussion about progress measures. And that is critical because attainment is important. Okay, we do know the difference children who reach the level 4 at the end of Key Stage 2, or whatever it's going to be in the future, don't ask me, no one's told me yet. And the children who get 5 A stars to C, including English and Maths. The data in terms of how much they're going to earn, how long they live, on a number of measures, is contingent on getting those attainment. It is horrifying, if we don't get children to those. Right? That's why the attainment is really important. However, we're basically in the school to say, are you making a difference to these children while they're in your classroom and while they're in your school? And that's the progress stuff. And it's the progress and the attainment together that come up with the achievement. And that's what we spend a lot of time looking at. So the attainment is important, but it is the progress that is really an indication of the difference we're making in our schools to the children. Okay, yes?
How might that change for like a free school that's maybe not got the examination data from year 11?
Yeah. And of course for academies, yeah, because we can't. Academy is a new institution, and we are not allowed to refer to the previous data from scratch. So we spend even more time looking at the school's internal progress checks, how they're capturing that data, and we look very carefully at what is in the books. Can we see that there has been progression?
So how much time, because if you've got raised for 2 months, or 2 weeks, you're saying, before, how much of that 2 weeks are you looking at? Because I think as a middle school, some middle schools it might be Key Stage 2 data for children you only have for 2 terms.
Yes.
But you could have them for another 3 years. So obviously that's just a very poor picture.
Yeah.
If you've got 2 weeks to look at raise and then 2 days to look at what we show you, how do you balance?
Well, the way it works in terms of how we're paid, so they expect the lead to spend a day analysing the data and writing the joining instructions. Okay. So a day just doing that is actually reasonably generous, I think. So that's all you're meant to do. And you're pulling up some hypotheses from that. If anyone says, we think you are, and you've got to prove us otherwise, you need to put in a complaint. The data is telling us some stuff, and we're going to go and test that when we go in. The middle schools are really, really difficult for the very reason you have said. So what happens there, and I know that you do it, Michael, having followed you on Twitter and read your blogs, you've got robust systems for actually measuring them up on entry, what they're doing on entry. And we do know there's a disparity between what the feeder schools are saying they're leaving with and what they arrive with. That is not just that they're ambitious or exaggerating. Two other things are playing into that. They've had their summer holidays and they're going to a new setting. And we know that it depresses. You know, people who are in secondary contexts, it's the same when they come into year 7. It's not that they've been overinflated. It might have been a bit. Okay. All right. But for those two things, we know every time there's a change, then our cognitive function goes down, because you're trying to work out where the loo is, not what the teacher's saying. Thing I'm running to. So if you've got your own internal measures, now middle schools are very fragile if they've not done that. Very fragile. And also, and quite often we're seeing that they make better progress at Key Stage 3 in the middle schools, and that's because, again, they're not changing at the end of year 6, and they've got in the beginning of Key Stage 3, so it's a complicated picture, but we have to rely even more on what the schools are saying. The other thing that is missing in a lot of middle schools work is they're not agreeing, they're not moderating the levels when they come. We must have those conversations with them, and then we can take it much more as. And the final thing that came to that is APS is too crude in too many middle schools, just relying on APS as a progress measure. It's not, it's the levels that really show it. But I know that you'll find it. They have more work to do, I'm afraid.
Yeah, I don't want to interrupt you too much. Something that's hard to say. I'm a head teacher of a secondary school, normal school, not academy, not preschool, just normal. And we've just come out of serious weaknesses with RI, which is a woohoo moment for us, and normal people probably think RI is rubbish, but we're thrilled. One of the frustrations I had as a head, and it is that I've led my school, there were 2 schools I've done now, but led lots of inspections in schools. This is the first time where an inspector, a lead inspector, asked for the data in a particular format, and she's not allowed to. And 3 times she asked for it. In the handbook says she can't ask for it in a particular way. She asked for it 3 times. We gave it 3 times in 3 different ways, and that was still not good enough to come out of category. But that was a frustration to me. And if I was a new head or not as experienced, I might have been more traumatised.
I think what happens is that quite often something will emerge quite early on in the inspection, and we'll say, have you got the data for that particular group, particular progress measures? And we're trying to get a picture of whether that's right or not. We don't care how you present it to us.
Well, we had the same data in 3 different ways is what we ended up doing. She must have been happy by the end, but it was frustrating.
Yeah.
And I think the throwaway phrase, which was given to me at 8:10 on day 2, you've got till break time to keep yourself out of special measures, was not the most helpful conversation for the assistant head. I know.
You're going to love me in head office. It is so bloody unnecessary.
It is, yeah.
I've put one school into special measures, still able to shake the head's hand at the end. It's not what's done, it's how it's done. Yeah.
Can I, while you're still on data,
Yeah.
we're about 2 tenths behind her,
Yeah.
so we're still in category.
Ah.
What happens when the internal data is wobbly? Because you only have, we're in 11 to 16 schools, so the data that we've got in previous years haven't been very good. I come on, the data last year wasn't very good. This year we know it's going to be. There's been some concerns in our recent inspection, which was Thursday, about...
You've just had an inspection?
Yeah, just had an inspection, about a monitoring visit.
Okay.
About the validity of the internal data. How do you manage when you're being presented with data when you go into a lesson and you see something different in the lesson and in the exercise book? I'm just interested in the way you would manage.
That's around quality assurance, really, and the extent to which it leads to management. That's a surprise to them. Now, from what you're saying, it sounds as though it's not a surprise.
It's not a surprise.
And I presume you're using, I mustn't sound as though I'm advertising, there's lots of orders out there, but things like 4 matrix or pixel type.
We use scissor, we use transition matrices and scissor every quarter. We've got more data coming out of our ears. It's the actual robustness of the classroom. I just wonder how you manage that.
Yeah, well, that's what we go to the classroom.
Yes.
Yeah. People need to be held to account.
Yes.
Okay. Bottom line is we'll pay quite a lot of money to get this right for kids. Right? And we need to be told that sometimes. Yeah. They deserve it. Raising their game. It's a tough one, but you will be given credit as a leadership team for acknowledging that. The worry was when leaders don't know.
Yes.
Yeah. And the one I was describing just now, it took to the end of day one to get the data for the SEND groups and the pupil premium groups. End of day one, they didn't have the data for it. When it arrived, it was rubbish. It was horrifying. Yeah, those kids. They'll turn around quickly because actually, it was a data desert. But it sounds like it's not a data desert. But it's about how we use that data, okay, intelligently to move practice on and listen to what our children are saying. Yeah. Done.
Just on data, you talked about levels there.
Yeah.
As we move away from levels, will there be more time built into inspections for you to come into a school and understand our way of reporting and what progress looks like for us? How will that still feature as part of the 2 days? Because I imagine that's going to take some time out of the short amount of time you have in a school.
We haven't been given any direction on that yet. I was talking to Mike Claddingbowl, the National Director of Schools, a couple of weeks or so ago on that, and he was saying it's likely that there'll be more focus on actually looking at books to be able to judge that. Yeah,
And
looking
tying
at
that
children's
back
work. We'll just have to build that in.
And tying that back into the school's reporting, internal reporting system. Okay.
It's a flaky time for everybody, we recognise that. Okay, sorry not to have anything more concrete on that one. And you know that the department has just announced about 3 weeks or so ago the prizes for schools that have developed assessment models across special and primary and secondary. I've just looked, I haven't really gone into that in depth. My impression, and other people may have want to come back with an observation, my impression of that is they look like some really good, strong, robust ones, but I suspect you would have needed to have been there to understood how they got there. It's my slight worry about pulling something off the shelf that someone else has developed. There's nothing to stop you continuing with levels for they've been withdrawn. There's nothing to stop you still using them.
Why are you? Why?
Why? Oh, talk to Tim Oakes. Load of nonsense. Incidentally, get on to
So I
Tim
won't
Oakes.
take this away and find something else.
Yeah, it's worth Googling. Also on the Department for Education, DfE just went up in the last week or so, Tim Oates talking about assessment in the new curriculum. What they seem to be saying is doing fewer things really well, checking that children have really got the concepts before rushing on. A lot of what Michael was talking about this morning in his session, mastery, and big questions, which is common sense really. The next one down is Alison Peacock talking about the new curriculum, and she's never used levels. Unfortunately, in that video, she's not actually talking about that, but there's a recent, I've just saved it, I can't remember what it's called, but a recent publication where she's actually talking about how they do assessment.
So I've spoken recently to a curriculum deputy and said, what are we doing next year? And he said, I think we're going to stick with levels. But I'm computer science, well, I will be a computer science teacher from September, and there aren't any, because it's brand new. So he said, we'll stick with levels, but every other subject in school's got some, but I haven't. So we've just been given this big framework thing from CAS and NACE, and it's colour-coded. So we're now going to say to the kids, you're purple.
I bet they'll love that.
You're grey.
As long as they can then describe what that is, okay. I think actually, go away and enjoy it with them.
From our local advisors, they said, well, sort of these colours at the top are Key Stage 2, and these colours in the middle are Key Stage 3, and these colours at the bottom are Key Stage 4, but it's open to your own interpretation. So we could put levels, whatever, wherever we want to on here, but then if we have a student who moves from one school to another, how are we going to be able to tell them what
Yeah.
what
It
they're
needs to be
at, where
described
they're
in kind of curriculum language. Sorry?
It's like APP in English and maths.
Yeah, yeah.
Statement.
And it's the same with RE, you know, that each local authority has its own one. So as long as they can talk about what they've done, yeah.
Yeah.
And the real thing is we don't teach children things they can already do. What a waste of time. So the receiving school's got to unpick what they can already do. 2 more questions then quickly, yeah.
But the current level and the level descriptors that sit behind them don't necessarily match with the attainment targets of the new national curriculum,
No.
do they? So
No.
if Ofsted was to come in September and a school was just to be using levels with old level descriptors, then they might have something to say about that?
Well, except I would argue the levels are skills based.
Right.
So just strip out the content and keep the qualities that the children are demonstrating.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so do they know something? Can they describe it? Can they apply? You know, the Bloom's type thing.
If Ofsted were to inspect a school, they just presented their levels in the old-fashioned ones, as it were.
Yeah.
what would they say about that, do you think?
We will accept whatever the school has got, as long as there's progress being shown that we can then triangulate.
Okay.
Okay, yeah, we'll try on that. Yes, you've got a question.
It's just a question about work scrutiny, because evidence over time, obviously work scrutiny is much more important than books. What mechanisms are Ofsted using for digital forms of work, with iPads, one-to-one devices, e-portfolios?
Yes, great, show us them.
So just bringing kids laptops, iPads.
Yeah.
Sorry, can I add
And
to
that's
that
great
then?
because it shows work in progress. Often, yeah.
What about when we have to give, we've been trying to be paperless in what was ICT for a long time,
Yeah.
but we keep hitting the same barrier that we use NYM at our school, we use next you must, and whenever you mark something, you give them a positive comment, then you give them next you must, and then you give them something else. We're struggling to do that electronically without having them email us something and us have to open it and save it somewhere and then make the comments and then
you can't mark,
save it back again and send it back.
No, got to
So
have a line.
what we're struggling with is evidencing our written feedback for our students when we're trying to do things
What you
electronically.
need is to be marking fewer things really well. You do not mark every piece of work. You think that's a waste of time. Okay. You need to be able to use evidence to tell a big story. Okay. Now, I would argue that the most important feedback is the kind of quality conversation you have with your children. Okay. You capture some of that, all right? Sometimes, you've got people doing, children doing narration over a PowerPoint or a keynote, as a result of what other people said or my teacher said, I'm now doing this. That's one way of capturing it. What's the other thing in there? Oh yes, and to mark fewer things really well. So bigger pieces, it's too much scrappy work going on, which has got marking that doesn't go anywhere. Is it building up to something, a big project or a product, which can then have some robust assessment around it, okay? Makes it much more meaningful and manageable. But if you're being told to mark every piece of work, direct them to me. Are they marking every bloody piece of work? Are they? No, of course they're not.
Everybody's thumbs went crazy when you said that.
Oh, I'm going to be in trouble, aren't I? Okay. If I'm going to keep you to time, because I can rub it on forever. Okay. We'll move on to the next one. What does Ofsted expect governors to do when looking at books going into classrooms? Okay, so, well, governors aren't usually teachers, so they should not be monitoring in the way that we gather evidence about what's high quality work. A question about monitoring actually and quality assurance. Why is it always top down? Why can't some AQTs actually quality assuring what I do as a senior leader? Yeah. Break down a few barriers to do that. Students of senior teachers are teaching, of course. So they can, but they need to be accompanied, right? They shouldn't be making. Well, they can go unaccompanied, but they shouldn't be making judgments about levels or anything like that. They need to be saying that actually stuff is being done according to what the school has set out to do. Right. So if there's a feedback and marking policy, much better it's feedback rather than marking. Checking that actually that is happening, not giving a level. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. Similarly, not a problem going into classrooms, but they shouldn't be using the Ofsted criteria, because that's not their job. Their job is to hold the school to account for what the school says it's doing. Okay. So we don't expect anything. What we do expect is that they are asking really great questions of the heads and senior leaders. One of the things I'm suggesting actually to the schools I'm working with is a standing item on the governing body minutes, instead of agenda rather, instead of the head's report. Why isn't it